Well, congratulations first off. Yeah, third term, kind of unprecedented. The last guy to do this, a Democrat anyway, was the late 1800s.
And I think back in those days, if I remember correctly, they were only 2-year terms too. So it was.
If you remember correctly, you weren't around back then.
No, but I studied a little bit of the history of Fort Wayne. But you're right though. For the most part, it was unprecedented, right?
Three terms here. It's quite the accomplishment, especially for a Democrat surrounded by Republicans.
Registration-wise, there are more Republicans than Democrats, yes.
How have you been able to manage to hold on to this office, to be a Democratic mayor in a mostly Republican area here, one that's strongly Republican anyway, and still keep your job?
Probably a couple things at play. One is our family has been here for a long time, and I come from a very large family. So the Henry name penetrating the community, I think, has been very helpful to me. Most of my relatives have kept the Henry name intact. They haven't done anything too outlandish. So I think for the most part, it's a well-respected name. So I think that helped out. Secondly, there's a saying that all politics are local, and I think a lot of the citizens realize that some of the issues that come to play at the state and federal level really don't come into focus here in Fort Wayne. Many of the issues of today, of national importance, our Congress takes care of that, or our state legislature. In Fort Wayne, we worry about jobs, obviously. We worry about public safety. We worry about our educational programs and the like. So you really don't get into partisanship as far as politics. In fact, I can count on one hand in my 28 years in office the amount of times that an actual issue came up where we had to bring politics into play.
So, I mean, you've been able to work with Republicans and Democrats that well all these years.
Well, I went to school with some of the members of City Council who were Republican. In fact, there's one coming in who I went to school with. I golfed with some of them. It's
kind of old school relationships, isn't it?
It is. In many ways, Fort Wayne's a big, small town, and we actually not only work with people in the community, we live with them. Mm-hmm. And it's not like our part-time legislature where they're gone 3 or 4 months out of the year, and we really don't have that physical contact with them, or at the federal level where you rarely see your congressmen and senators. I'm with the citizens every day, and I think that means a lot.
3 terms now. Is this going to be your last term?
I love my job. I'm just starting this term, so I'd like to see what happens this term. Yeah, one of the things you learn in the political arena is never say never.
So there could be a 4th term.
I don't know. It's,
well, Mr. Mayor.
I enjoy being mayor. I think I've done a pretty good job. I've got a tremendous staff. The people of Fort Wayne are a great group of citizens. I would be foolish not to say that I didn't love my job. Being mayor is one of the best jobs in the world. So to say today, I'm starting my 3rd term, and incidentally, I'm interested in running for a 4th. Let's see how we do the 3rd term.
Okay, but we can at least say that the door is still open to that 4th term.
But you never say never. You never say never in politics. I learned that the hard way.
There was a lot of discussion during the campaign about your public safety director, and he just ran for council and lost that seat. Are you going to keep him on? Are you going to continue to have that position?
There's no changes with Rusty York as my public safety director. Now, should he decide to retire from the police department, then as I said during the campaign, I will sit down with my current police chief, Gary Hamilton, and my current fire chief, Eric Leahy, and discuss with them how they feel about this. I brought Rusty aboard primarily because, one, we were having some spikes in the criminal activity in our community, and I needed to have someone who could really spend more time than I could with the operational part of the police department. Also, our fire department was changing. We were bringing in new technology. We were bringing in new ways of training firefighters. And again, it needed a lot of attention. We used to have a public safety director in Fort Wayne. The previous mayor decided to eliminate that position, which was certainly his call. I decided at the time to bring it back. And I think it served us very well. Crime dropped. Our fire department is more professional than ever. So I think what we wanted to do, we were able to accomplish. Now we'll need to constantly assess the situation. I'll sit down with Rusty after he gets back to work, and we'll talk about his position. And should he decide to stay, that position is his. He earned it. He's done an outstanding job, and for as long as he wants to be my public safety director, that's where he'll be.
Has he indicated that he might want to retire at this point?
He is eligible to retire. I don't know whether or not he'll choose to. I'm sure after that many years on the force and involved in public safety, I'm sure he gets tired. He's got an extremely difficult job. Anyone who dedicates themselves to public safety pays a tremendous price.
I want to stay on the subject of the police department here real quickly, because obviously there was a lot of discussion during the campaign. A difference of opinion is that we needed more officers on the street, or we needed to have better training. Those are kind of very different points of view that you had with Mitch. There's a lot of talk, though, that the police department is very top-heavy. There are a lot of administrative positions, a lot of different jobs that are in the building rather than out on the street. Sure. Would you be willing to support some early retirements or some kind of programs that would get more people to maybe decide to hang it up for a while and to allow younger guys to be brought onto the force?
That's an operational question, and that's something that, again, I need to bring in Gary Hamilton, my police chief, and Rusty York, my head of public safety. As we enter into the new year, I ask every one of my division directors, take a look at your division, take a look at your department heads, take a look at your supervisors, and determine whether or not the head count that we have now is appropriate. And sometimes it changes. Certainly with changing technology, we've been able to cut staff over the years. In fact, right now, I don't have any more staff than I had 8 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. So you haven't added any more police officers on the field because
it hasn't been needed. You know, a lot of people think that you need to hire police officers based upon your population. You know, how many officers per capita? Well, that's been proven now time and time again to not be an accurate way to determine how many police officers you need. You base it upon the number of incidents. You base it upon the number of violent crimes itself, and there's a number of other factors that now you need to take into consideration, not just how many people you have. That's proven to be over and over again to be the wrong way. So that's the methodology that we've chosen, and that's what I'll continue to do.
Okay, let's talk about legacy here.
Sure.
Because obviously, you know, you're going to be serving this third term here. What do you hope to accomplish over the next 4 years? What's the big thing you want to do?
Well, right now we have about 5 or 6 initiatives that we started a year or two ago, and they're now on their way to being completed. If you allow me, you know, Cityscape Flats, a huge contribution to our city from a housing perspective. We have more demand now for housing than we have housing downtown. That's a great problem to have. Well, we need to obviously address that desire or that need. So Cityscape Flats, the new brownstones and the flats and the apartments that are going to be built across from Parkview Field, it's going to be a significant contribution to downtown because it will provide housing and it'll provide more opportunities for people to contribute to the economic base of downtown. We have the new Ash building, which is on its way to being completed. We're going to have between 200 and 400 more employees working downtown. Again, not only contributing to the economic base of our downtown, but when you see more people living and working downtown, the better it is for downtowns in general. We have the landing. We're in the process now of determining who our developer is going to be. We should know by the end of the year. That project will begin in the spring. We have the new Superior lofts that are going to be built on Superior Street. They're now taking leases. So we have a lot of activity going on in the River Greenway project itself, the Riverfront project itself. We're in phase 1 of that with property acquisition and all. So we have a lot of initiatives that we're working on now. All of those we need to make sure are completed over the next few years. And then we have a few new ones too that we'll be introducing to council and to the citizens. Well, one of them that I'm very interested in is the Spy Run Bridge. It's called the Samuel Bigger Bridge. Okay. It's next to Three Rivers Apartments. It is a very, I'm trying to be kind. It's not a very good-looking bridge. Okay. If you've driven over it, you'll see concrete jersey barriers on each side with a very narrow sidewalk. And on purpose, I've had my staff, as well as myself, we look at that bridge constantly. We're judging how many people use those sidewalks because we've been encouraging people to walk and to jog and to bicycle. And they use the Martin Luther King Bridge quite often. They rarely use the Samuel Bigger Bridge because it's a dangerous bridge and it's an ugly bridge. So what I'd like to do is talk to the City Council and the Legacy Committee about maybe looking at some legacy money, since a new facelift would obviously be transformational, would be catalytic contribution to our downtown. I'm going to be talking to the CIB Committee, food and beverage tax. They use that for capital improvement. And then I've already been talking to our U.S. Senator about possibly getting some federal help as well. But I think by leveraging each one of those areas that we could generate enough revenue to build a brand new bridge, or a facelift, I should say. Structurally, the bridge is fine. Right. But put a whole new top on it. So your experience going out of our town would be just the same as coming in, which everyone has told me is a wonderful experience. So that's what's one of the projects.
Would you be willing to take every single penny of those legacy funds and build something massive? Something that would be an incredible, substantial thing that generations to come would point at and say, Tom Henry did that?
I don't know if I would take all of the money. I would be willing to sit down and talk about a substantial piece of that money being dedicated to a project like that. But I think it's also necessary to take some of that money and be able to pass that on to the next generation, to give them an opportunity to invest some monies as well. When my administration, when we negotiated the new I&M lease, there was some money left over from the previous lease. Mm-hmm. So we had some money coming forward. Well, I think it's probably just as important to pass on to the next generation when the lease expires in 15 years, to have some money left over there as well. But I would invest a lot.
You would take a lot of that. Would you be willing to take a lot of that, a big chunk of that, to say, put an arena downtown?
That's a good question. I think if it was determined that arena would be in our best interest, and obviously we don't know that yet. The committee is still working on that. I'm hoping to have something from the committee by the end of this year, or certainly first quarter of next year. If it's determined that's in the best interest of our community, then obviously we need to sit down and take a look at the various revenue streams that would be available to build something of that caliber. Legacy money, I'm sure, would be an area we have to consider. CIB money is obviously an area. Naming rights would be an area. Private investment outside of that could be an area. I think there are a number of potential revenue streams that we'd have to take a look at. But would legacy money be looked at? Obviously would have to be, because that would be a transformational project for downtown. There's no question about that. But it still needs to be determined whether or not we should do it.
There was kind of an interesting thing that was brought up by Mitch Harper, actually, one of his ideas during the debate the other day. And something that I've noticed personally as I've come into town here a lot, because I really do enjoy the downtown, and my wife and I are kind of urban supporters. So we've enjoyed coming into downtown, but it's not easy getting here from the burbs. I mean, it takes a little while. You have to make the determined decision you're going to come in here. And Harper has suggested, and I don't know if you'd ever discussed this with him, following along the railroad tracks or doing something to that effect, looking at some kind of penetrating roadway. Is that something you would be considering?
Well, that's been looked at before. That's not a novel idea. That was looked at probably 10 to 12 years ago. And at that time, it was determined that it was cost prohibitive. I think the idea was a good one, but if you take a look at what it would cost to logistically make that work and the financial contribution that would be necessary, it probably would be cost prohibitive. And really, you say it takes a long time to get into town.
Well, it doesn't.
It's not that, exactly, it's not that
I
bad.
agree. Well, we still come down. But it was an intriguing idea anyway.
Oh, the idea, I think we always have to look for ways of moving traffic better. But interestingly enough, a lot of cities are now taking their one-way streets and converting them to two-way. For a number of reasons, not the least of which those businesses that are located on those corridors now are going to have twice as many people seeing their businesses than before because you've got traffic going both ways.
Is that something you'd be willing to do around here?
We've already done it.
Okay.
On Ewing and Fairfield, we already changed those from one-way to two-way. And not only is it really a more pleasant experience because you have traffic calming that takes place as well, but certainly the businesses are happier. And we've also helped the businesses with facade grants and the like. You probably always have to have some main corridors going one way to move traffic in and out of town, but you need to limit those to only those that are absolutely necessary, and I think that's what we've done.
One of the subjects that got a lot of attention earlier this year, I believe, was the whole RFRA issue that came up with the governor and with the state legislature and that sort of thing here. Would you be willing to say absolutely that there would be no possibility of a RFRA-type ordinance going into effect in the city of Fort Wayne that might affect the LGBT community?
There already is one.
Already solid
Yes.
down on the line?
It's already an ordinance. I know because I wrote it. Back in the 1990s, I did write an ordinance, and it did pass city council prohibiting prohibiting hiring and the like based upon sexual orientation.
When we, 4 years from now, or 8 years from now, or whenever the reign of Mayor Henry comes to an end, and generations later on are looking back at your time here, what's the one thing they're going to point at downtown or within the city limits of Fort Wayne and say that was Tom Henry's doing?
Oh my gosh, that's a tough question. I know this is going to sound rather altruistic, but I've never really used that as a part of my decision-making process. Some people like to have their names on buildings and the like. That's never been a part of my agenda. I'm hoping that they look back and say that Fort Wayne perhaps is thriving then because of things that were put into place today. Whether it's, again, the legacy fund or the contribution to a downtown that made it a little more exciting and inviting so that more businesses came downtown, and as a result, the city of tomorrow is successful because of the foundation we laid today.